It all started on April Fool's Day. All my friends were hanging out in my living room, trying to come up with the best April Fool's jokes we could pull to make ourselves laugh. I eventually got everyone on the same page about prank calls. They were the easiest, funniest thing we could do without even going outside. At first, we hit the lowest hanging fruit, our gullible moms and clueless dads. When we exhausted that resource, we moved on to our old friends that fell off after high school. Then, only the riskiest marks remained. Bitchy girls, bosses, and professors. Everyone we mentioned got prank called somehow, until I mentioned the doctor, Dr. Mosley, the oldest primary physician in town, and everybody knew he was a total dick. How he still had his license, nobody knew. His anger issues were severe and widely known. He was the best access to medical care within a considerable distance, so you did not want to get on his bad side. Perhaps for that reason, none of my friends had the balls to prank call the doctor, but I had no problem doing so.
You've reached the office of Dr. Mosley. Would you like to schedule an appointment?
Please, you gotta help me. Send the doctor over here quick.
Sir, if this is an emergency, hang up and dial 911.
No, I can't wait for an ambulance. I'll die before I get to the hospital. Please!
You know the doctor doesn't make house calls.
Come on, you gotta make an exception. I'm dying here.
Of what?
Well, I slipped and fell and accidentally a meat tenderizer got stuck up my ass.
Okay, and what's the address for the doctor?
It's 267 Chutling Avenue. Please, hurry. I can feel it tenderizing me. It's a far-ass address. Dude, I can't. He sounded so pissed.
After that, it was only a matter of time before the doctor ran out of his office in a hurry to save a life, right until he realized it was all a lie. Then, about an hour or two later, he called back.
Hello? You sack of shit! Do you think what I do is a joke? I save lives! But I know how to take them too! I'm gonna find out who you are and strangle you with your own intestines! You're gonna regret wasting my time, you fucking bitch! You hear me? You hear me? Holy shit! That's the best one! That's the best one!
It was really the best laugh I had in a long time, but that was only because we weren't taking anything he said seriously. A little while later, my friends all left. They had to go to bed at a reasonable time for class in the morning, but I was planning to stay up late and play video games for a while. It didn't take long for my phone to start blowing up. I expected that to happen, so I ignored it, except 2 hours later, it was still ringing non-stop. Not a single other person we had prank called stayed mad for more than a few minutes, but the doctor was not giving up. I was starting to get a bit worried, honestly, so I finally answered.
Yo, Doc, chill. It was just an April Fool's prank. Don't sweat it. So then you won't mind that I'm standing outside your apartment, Tom Rogers.
Suddenly, I realized the severity of the mistake I made. It was still April 1st, so maybe he was just pranking me back. I looked out my window and didn't see him in the parking lot. Then I went to my door and checked through the peephole. No sign of him there either. That was a bit of a relief, but I still wanted to make sure. I quietly unlocked and opened my door, then poked my head out into the hall. Then, a figure came into focus. At the far end of the hall, the doctor stood with a knife in his hand. As soon as I saw him, he bolted towards me. I ducked back into my apartment, then slammed the door shut. I locked it and leapt away as I listened to his footsteps booming down the hall until they stopped right in front of my door. Despite the overwhelming fear, I was curious enough to look through the peephole. He was smiling in the worst way, but it looked like he was finally finding joy in becoming a nightmare of a human being. I had to get him to go away. I didn't know what to say, but I had to do something. Without warning, he started breaking through the door. He was unstoppable. He smashed through it in a rage like nothing I'd ever seen. I screamed for help, scrambled for my phone to call the police, but by the time I looked back, he was already inside, and I had backed myself into a corner.
Please, Please don't do this. I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. I'll do anything you want. Anything.
This April Fool's story was inspired by a case known as the Dr. Mosley stabbing that happened in 1886. A prankster named Tom Rogers of Kaufman, Texas, played a joke on Dr. Mosley. He left a message for the doctor to go out to the country a distance of 3 miles to see a critically ill young lady. Dr. Mosley rode his trusted steed to the destination and discovered that it was merely a hoax. The doctor was not amused. In fact, he was fully enraged. Discerning that Rogers was the culprit, Dr. Mosley found Rogers and mercilessly attacked him with a knife. He stabbed Rogers in the body, neck, and face, and continued until several fatal wounds had been inflicted.
Don't forget the casserole. Okay, all right. Yvonne! I'm here, sweetie! Yvonne! I brought casserole! My hands are full! Preston? It's Grandma! I'm here to take you to school! Could you open the door for me? Jeez, what's going on with them? Come on. I just had them. There. Hello? Anyone home? Well, they must be out. Guess I'll wait inside. Just grab this. Okay. Preston? I didn't see you there. Why didn't you answer the door? Preston, where is your mother?
Kitchen.
Oh, all right. Well, let me go talk to her, and then I'll take you to school. All right?
Backyard.
What was that? Well, which is it? Is she in the kitchen or is she in the backyard? Preston, use your words.
Kitchen, backyard, kitchen, backyard, kitchen, backyard, kitchen, backyard!
What the hell is with him? Yvonne, you mind telling me what's wrong with my grandson? He's acting like a...
That was the day I found my daughter. Dead, murdered, decapitated. I ran outside, screaming for anybody to help me. I didn't know it would draw such a crowd. I didn't think people would be more interested in gawking at my daughter's dead body and her severed head than they would actually be willing to do anything about it. My daughter's house became the center of attention for the entire town. Police, investigators, neighbors, onlookers, hell, even dogs went traipsing through the crime scene. Nobody was prepared to do what they were supposed to do. It was like an exhibit with no entry fee. And poor Preston, he didn't understand any of what was happening. He never could have done something like that. He couldn't possibly imagine it. This was the work of a sick individual, a monster of the most vile order. I didn't, and frankly, I still don't know of a single person alive who could be capable of something so terrible. The police, however, had a singular candidate. Yvonne's ex-boyfriend, David, Preston's father. I was never happy about how they had Preston without ever getting married, but I always gave David credit for being involved and supportive when he found out the child was his. But that day, my opinion changed. My image of him as a reluctant yet loving father was destroyed, replaced by a disgusting, unforgivable demon who used my daughter for his own sick pleasures, then killed her to get out of dealing with the consequences of bringing a child into this world. Had I been given final say, he would have hanged, but I had to settle for him being in prison for the rest of his life. That would have to be good enough, a basis from which I could begin to grieve, process, and eventually try my best to move on. Then as the years passed, hindsight made things clear. The reality of the situation wasn't as clear-cut as it seemed at the time. The investigation, the autopsy, the trial, it was all completely botched. The cops didn't bother to gather any evidence, and what evidence there might have been, they destroyed with their carelessness. The medical examiner, was a forgetful, lazy dope, and the lawyers on both sides of the aisle were so drunk or stupid they couldn't tell their own asses apart. No fingerprints, no DNA, no eyewitnesses, no logic to be found anywhere. Yet the police were convinced from the very beginning that David had committed the crime, and nothing got in the way of getting the conviction they wanted, not even the truth. They abandoned reason for prejudice. They forsook justice for false closure. Now, I don't even know who truly killed my daughter, and it may very well be the case that an innocent man has taken the blame for the last 20 years. On April Fool's Day of 1999, a woman named Yvonne was found dead in her home by her mother. Her throat had been cut while her young children were present in the house, though they were not physically harmed. The initial investigation was heavily criticized for poor crime scene management, including allegations that officers did not wear protective gear and stepped over evidence. The case centered on David Thorne, Yvonne's ex-boyfriend and the father of one of her children. David was eventually convicted in 2000 of hiring a friend to kill Yvonne and sentenced to life without parole. He's maintained his innocence for over 2 decades. Joe Wilkes, a friend of Thorne who confessed to the murder, claiming Thorne paid him to do it, was sentenced to 30 years to life.
I'm all for using humor to pass the time, but there is a line that should never be crossed. Unfortunately, some people can't tell where that line is. I've been working at Waffle House for years. I work the overnight shift, where it's usually just 2 people, me behind the grill, and 1 server. The server I work with most is this crazy bitch Dawn. Like me, she's had some run-ins with the law before, though where I have tried to put my mistakes behind me, Dawn has retained the knack for mischief that gets her into trouble. Dawn is a nasty nutcase. She yells and threatens customers for the smallest mistakes. She even comes after me when I don't do things her way. And then there's Dawn's idea of jokes, like flinging dead rats at me, randomly spitting on me, and telling female customers to stay away from me because I'm a registered sex offender, which by the way, I'm not. With everything she's done, I've grown to truly despise Dawn, and sometimes even fear her. I can put up with her most of the time, but she has nights where she is especially manic. This last April Fool's Day was one of those nights. From the start, I could tell something was up with her. She wouldn't stop fidgeting, mumbling, and talking about how this was going to be the best April Fool's Day ever. She was just trying to have a normal shift, but she seemed hell-bent on literally destroying the building. She kept telling me to dump ice into the deep fryer, rip the breakers out, and cross the wires to start a fire, stuff like that. At some point, when there were no customers around, she disappeared into the back. I stayed up front, not wanting to be out of sight with her. I poured myself a soda, but it was more out of boredom than thirst. I took a few sips, then set it down. I hadn't asked her, but I was wondering what she was doing in there until a few minutes later. I smelled something burning. Immediately, I rushed through the back to look for her. I only had to follow the smoke. I found her in the supply closet, huddled over an entire pallet of napkins that was engulfed in flames.
Dawn, what the hell are you doing?
April Fools!
Get away from that!
I acted quickly, grabbing a fire extinguisher and dousing the flames before they got out of control. Dawn started screaming at me as the room filled with smoke and icy, suffocating vapors. As she continued berating me, I ignored her and went outside for a cigarette. When I went back in, I fully expected to be attacked and screamed at, but oddly, she didn't say a word. She just looked at me using those crazy eyes of hers, with a wide, rotten smile on her face. I thought maybe the fire was enough for her. Maybe she scratched her itch for the night. Not long after, some customers came in. Once they ordered their food, I started whipping it up at the grill. As always, the heat made me thirsty, so before I knew it, I had finished up the drink I poured myself before the whole fire fiasco. Soon, another table sat down, then another. All of a sudden, we were having a rush. I was making order after order, sweating my ass off. Out of nowhere, an insane hobo rushed into the store. Before I could even react, he started screaming a bunch of gibberish. I tried to get him to leave, but it only made him target me. He leapt over the counter and tried to tackle me. I dodged just in time, but then he grabbed the back of my shirt and poured something down it. It felt like ants. No, Spiders, crawling and biting and burrowing their way into my spine. I started screaming for help, but nobody came. I turned back to face the hobo, just for him to be gone and replaced with Dawn. She stood over me and started laughing. She was like a witch or a demon. I could no longer move. She reached her hands down towards my face. As this beating sound became so loud it was deafening. It was like a horde of moaning zombies banging on the windows, trying to get in. But I couldn't see anything but Dawn's hands reaching into my chest and ripping out my heart. That's not the last thing I remember, but it's the last thing I can bring myself to mention. I felt like I was in hell for an eternity, constantly tortured and tormented, trapped in an ever-changing nightmare with Dawn as my only companion and no hope to escape. After what felt like forever, I finally woke up. I was in the hospital, hooked up to thousands of machines. The doctor said I had been in a coma for months with a massive overdose of methamphetamine that should have absolutely killed me. By the time I was conscious, they had already figured out who did it. Dawn. After the incident with the fire, they caught her on camera lacing my drink with a white powder while I was smoking. She claimed it was just an April Fool's joke, something to get me to lighten up. I'm lucky to be alive, but the drugs have permanently altered my mind and body in ways I may never fully recover from. At least Dawn got what she always wanted, to spend the rest of her short, miserable, depressing life in prison. This April Fool's story was inspired by a waitress who has been arrested on charges that she spiked a co-worker's drink with methamphetamine during their late-night shift at a Waffle House in northern Georgia, causing the drugged man to be hospitalized in a comatose state. Investigators spent nearly 2 months collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses before they arrested a 43-year-old woman named Sansaria Dawn Evans. She remained jailed Thursday on charges of illegal drug possession and aggravated battery. Evans' 37-year-old co-worker remains unnamed, but was mentioned that the man is still battling to recover from a drug overdose that left him critically ill for weeks after he collapsed at the restaurant. Waffle House's corporate office shared restaurant surveillance video with the investigators, which showed Evans picking up the co-worker's cup when he stepped outside for a break, then taking the cup toward the bathroom. She returned and set the drink down before her co-worker came back inside. The video showed the man drink from the cup, and within an hour, he's getting medical attention.